Hey guys, this is Chris from AndroidPIT.com, and today we have the Sony Xperia Z3, which has just been announced at IFA 2014, and we're putting it side by side Samsung's Galaxy S5. One's a little old, one's brand new. Let's see which one comes out on top in today's side by side comparison. Okay, so we've got the Z3 on the left and the S5 on the right, and you can see straight away design stands out as one of the major differences. So the Sony has some fairly square corners and much larger bezels. The S5 on the other hand is much more rounded, and you can see it's actually a smaller device. So the Z3 has a slightly larger screen and it's an LCD. The S5 on the other hand is a Super AMOLED, of course, and it's a slightly smaller screen, and yet it's a smaller device. If we put them together, you can see size-wise there's not too much in it, but the Z3 is definitely larger. They're about the same width though. So take a look at the edges. You can see the difference in the approach to styling as well. Of course, we've got Sony's OmniBalance design, and we've got this kind of nice brushed metal feel on the side, which is pretty nice, and we've got this sort of plastic metallic thing on the S5. So we've both got headphone ports up the top and mics, but the S5 has a infrared blaster and the Sony does not. On the other side, we of course have the waterproof ports for the Z3 and the dedicated camera shutter button. On the S5 we don't have any camera shutter button, but we do have a removable back panel on the back, which will obviously give you access to the micro SD card and of course the removable battery, which the Z3 does not have. When we take a look at the cameras, we've got the 20.7 megapixel Sony G lens on the Z3, and we've got the 16 megapixel ISOCELL sensor on the S5. We'll get it back into that in a little bit. Just underneath the camera on the S5, we have the, of course, dual LED flash and the heart rate sensor. On the front, we have our speakers down the back too, and on the front we have our much vilified fingerprint scanner and the dedicated home button. Up front on the Z3, we don't have any gimmicks like that. We just have the Sony Xperia UI versus the TouchWiz UI on the S5. Let's take a quick look at the apps. Now, in terms of responsiveness, I have to say the Z3 is a little bit snappier. Of course, TouchWiz is a little bit laggy, as we already know, and some things like that you can see are really quite slow. Same as my magazine, it's just not very responsive. If we take a look at the camera apps, where are we can see the Z3 loads up much faster than the S5. Of course, the S5 has some pretty fantastic camera capabilities, but then again, the Z3 is not exactly far behind either. When we talk about megapixel count, the Z3 has the S5 trumped, of course, 20.7 megapixels versus 16 megapixels. In low light situations, you can see the Z3 up top definitely destroys the S5, which you can barely even see at the bottom. If we scroll back through, you can see the differences in color, of course, a little bit richer on the S5, but the Z3 handles things quite well. Now, this is in HDR mode. You can see in the background here, the S5 handles the brightness outside a little bit better than the Z3, which is a little washed out. And in normal mode, they're both struggling. Up close, things are pretty even, although you can see the color differences between the reds on both devices. Again, up close, color reproduction is nice. The Z3 is a little bit on the dark side, and again, you can see the color differences outside in full daylight as well. Again, the Z3 produces much more reddish pinks versus the slightly more realistic tones on the S5, but generally speaking, the S5 will produce much more realistic colors on skin tone. You can see it's all a little bit washed out on the Z3, which we've seen on other Sony devices this year as well. Again, this is actually interesting. There's a lot more orange going on the S5, and this is a little bit overly crimson, but they're both not really accurate to true life. Colors, nice and bright, both are looking okay, but of course you get less contrast on the Z3 than you will on the S5. So internally, there's quite a lot of things that are actually the same. There's the same processor and lots of other things that are similar as well. Like the screens are very similar other than the technology type, and a very minor change in size. The storage capacities are the same. Both have micro SD, but of course the Z3 has a waterproof flap over the top, and the S5, of course, you can remove the backplate to access your micro SD and the battery. The Z3 doesn't have a removable battery, which may be a problem for some. Now the Z3 has 3 gig of RAM and the S5 only has 2. The Sony of course beats the S5 in camera resolution, and as far as interfaces go, that's kind of up to you. It all depends on what you like to see, whether you like the slightly more minimal look of the Xperia UI or you like the more colourful and bright TouchWiz UI. So Sony has their new LifeLog app, and of course Samsung has the S Health app for all of your wearable needs. When it comes down to it though, both devices are pretty fantastic. The S5 has been out for a little bit longer, the Z3 is brand new. Some things are better in the Z3, actually most things are better in the Z3. We have more RAM, we have a bigger battery, a higher resolution camera, although I do think the S5 camera is a little bit better when it comes to performance. There's a few more gimmicks in the S5, maybe that's the kind of thing you're after. Maybe you're a gaming fan and you like the PlayStation 4 connectivity with the Z3. It's not in the Play Store yet, that'll be there in November, but you'll be able to remotely connect to any of your PlayStation 4 games on your Z3, and there's also a soon-to-come game controller adapter so you can actually play on your own as well. So it all sort of boils down to what you want. If the Z3 had have come out at the start of the year, I think I would have picked it, but considering the S5 is getting old now, I kind of would have expected a little bit more from the Z3. Of course, the Z3 is newer and in many respects better, but is it good enough to take over the S5? You tell us in the comments below. Make sure you subscribe to the video. Let us know what you want to see next, and check out the website. Till next time guys, this is Chris.